Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Narratives Cast. This time it is a guaranteed episode 16. I am totally sure of that and did not goof and not check before the podcast started. I'm Kay, they, them.
I'm Elliott, he, him.
And today we're going to talk about the hero's journey as per Elliott's request.
Yeah.
He goes by Gremsy online, so that's what I'm used to calling him.
Yeah, no, you can call me that. It's no biggie. So the hero's journey is interesting because it's 11 main points. It's a character is living their normal life. Then there's a call to adventure. Then they get assistance from be it like a neighborhood, old guy, some other third thing, and then they leave for their quest. And then there's the trials. There's something where they get tested, and then.
A very important part that you skipped that most of these things have is crossing the threshold, which is where they're no longer in their comfort zone.
Right, and
then the tests happen.
That is very important. I'm sorry.
It's good.
And then there's the crisis, the big turning point, the plot twist, the main character's love interest dies, the old guy dies. It's a lot of death. And then after that, there's the treasure. Yeah, the guy gets, or the person gets their reward. They get the sword that seals darkness. And then the result, where they find the main conflict and squash it. And then there's the return, where they go back to their village, and then there's a new life where when they come back, things are different. They have a new outlook on life. They have a new attitude towards things. And then there's the resolution, where everything is left off. And then the cycle continues from there. It's a big circle.
I generally don't use like the hero's journey as a way to track stories. I tend to use the act system, where there's 3 acts. Where Act 1 is everything leading up to crossing the threshold. Then Act 2 is when you cross the threshold. And then Act 3 is when the ordeal starts, most of the time, generally. And then at the end of Act 3, there tends to be the denouement, or the conclusion, the resolution, whatever. Epilogue is another word for it, where like they go back to the village or whatever, and things are going back to kind of how they were. But of course it can't be the same because the character changed over the journey.
Right.
So I think that the hero's journey is interesting because it definitely is a strong, like, indicator of how people, what's the word? It's a strong indicator of how people frequently wrote these stories in order to make them compelling.
Exactly, and that's the thing about the hero's journey, is that you don't need it to you
could toss it aside so easily.
You don't need to write a story based on the hero's journey. A good pardon my use of Rick and Morty, but there's a episode in season 3 where they go in space and meet these big heroes. They're the Avengers of space.
They're called the
Vindicators.
The Vindicators, yeah.
So they go to the Vindicators, and then Morty's like, "Whoa, these guys are cool. They're like, I'm their biggest fan." And then Rick, throughout the entire episode, is like, "No, they're bullshit, and here's why." So immediately, the hero's journey is shattered because Morty doesn't have a goal towards this, because he's just frustrated at them for sucking.
Yeah.
And this entire episode is Rick saying that, like, I'm better than you, and here's why. He sets up the death traps to, like, be better than all of them, and just prove his superiority in a lot of different ways. And so the whole episode is that, plus Morty being frustrated by everything about it. So that's, I mean, while it's not the strongest episode in the story strongest episode in the series in terms of story, it's a very good example of how you can stray away from the hero's journey and still tell a story.
I think Rick and Morty is a strong deconstruction of a lot of different, like, media tropes. And I think the hero's journey is one of the strongest tropes that Rick and Morty deconstructs. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't, like, the first step, the known, like, the getting comfortable with the setting and whatnot that everyone's comfortable with, kind of gets thrown aside very, very quickly. And some episodes completely ignore, like the home life of everyone in favor of the weird multiverse alien dimensional stuff.
Right.
And so like that first step of the hero's journey is kind of somewhat consistently ignored. Generally the like refusal to the call, like the hero being like, I don't want to do this shouldn't be my job, can frequently also get ignored because Rick never gives Morty really a choice on whether or not he's going to do these things. And Rick really never gives anyone a choice on whether or not they're going to do these things because the multidimensional stuff happens anyway. And like crossing the threshold for these characters is different than it would be for other heroes because this weird stuff is sort of normal for them to in the first place. They're a little bit used to it because they know that Rick does all this shit all the time. And every episode, like the conclusion, my favorite example of this is like their the Purge episode where they parody the Purge.
Mm-hmm.
The conclusion for that one, like Morty's not even involved with it. The story set up like a hero's journey for Morty, like protecting and rescuing this girl or whatever and trying to get out of the Purge. But then like Morty ends up like passing out and Rick just says, fuck it, you want to go kill all the rich people? This new girl that fucking is supposed to be like the damsel in distress? And so the conclusion just gets like totally thrown aside and everything gets just completely shifted.
Yeah. Shit, sorry. Yeah, that's a good example of how, because like you said, it is very poignant, whatever. Poignant, there you go. That it's not important to have a hero story because that is a good episode of the series, and it's very it's powerful in a way because it's showing that you don't need it to tell a good story, and it's just bullshit, all of it, just everything.
So tropes aren't necessary for all stories. Right. But tropes are generally, they exist for a reason because they're good and you can use them to like give people a general sense of like understanding and comfort for like a story that they're working with, or you can use it to like establish an idea of what a character is supposed to kind of be. So in case of like a quick throwaway character that you don't want to spend a lot of time with, you can basically write them as a trope so that people just go, oh cool, they're this trope real fast, and they get like a quick comfort level with them instead of having to like establish them a lot.
Yeah,
but breaking tropes is also a lot of fun. For sure.
That's a good point. There's a lot of characters in media or TV, just media, and that can be written off with a single word, like brute, smart aleck. It's a lot of different. It's easy, is basically it. It's easy to identify these characters as it's just this or it's just this. But there's a way to get more complex from that. You take these basic tropes and you break them down. Sure, he's just like a warrior meathead, but he's also got a heart of gold. Or he might just be a scholar, but he's frustrated by their lack of strength. I don't know. But
I was gonna say meathead with a heart of gold is definitely a trope, though.
Yeah, it is. You're right, but it's a trope that's a little more in depth than a one-word descriptor.
Yeah.
So it is a trope, but like a more advanced trope by like 1 step, 0.5 steps. You take the trope and then you move like right just a little bit, and then you
got a new one. That's the one. So I think that like, one of my favorite like discussions of tropes is in BoJack Horseman. There's an episode where the police are arguing about whether or not one of the cop fits one of multiple like cop character tropes, and they have like a vote about it and stuff, and it's really funny. They're trying to decide if he's like a renegade with a heart of gold, and everyone's like, you can't be that. And some of them was trying to decide if he's like the rugged one who's in for like just one last job, and it's like your retirement's not for 10 years, can't be that one. And they're all like discussing all these tropes that these cops are supposed to fit into. And it's pretty funny to think of like these actual cops arguing what tropes they're supposed to be in. And it's also, like I said, just a good discussion of those tropes and like pointing out that these tropes are common and that in fact this show is using those tropes regularly.
Yeah, so a lot of those things are, I didn't have anything to say.
That's fair. Shows don't usually like talk about their tropes and deconstruct them a lot, so it's usually a little bit difficult to notice them unless you're like being nitpicky. Or if they're way too obvious, then it's a bad trope. Or bad usage of tropes.
So there are ways of writing tropes that are, interesting by themselves. Like, sure, there you got the stereotypical people, but you can still write these characters in a way that doesn't make them seem stereotypical. Like, these are the base personalities, but there's a way above that. There's a way. You can write these characters having basic personalities and still have it being a compelling story. Like Kingdom Hearts is starring a kid who just wants to save the world. I don't know.
Sora's only character trait is friendship.
Exactly, but according to what I hear, I haven't played any of the games, but according to what I hear, I
played all of them but 2.
Yeah, so it's still a compelling story.
Yeah.
It's still like a good story.
Part of the reason why it's compelling, I think that Kingdom Hearts' story is actually frequently detracted from itself because I think the anime bullshit is actually kind of interesting and engaging. The stuff that like people criticize the most in the plot for being like too complex to understand sometimes. I think that's the most interesting part of Kingdom Hearts' story. But Kingdom Hearts spends so much time in the Disney worlds where the plot doesn't really touch the actual like mainline anime plot, that it kind of detracts from itself. And so the people who are like really engaged in those moments, it's because they're big fans of Disney. Whereas I'm not a huge fan of Disney. So when I was playing those, I was like, just get the cutscenes over with. Just let me do the combat. That's the stuff that I think is fun. I just want to play the game. And oh my god, some of the sections are absolutely hilarious too. In Kingdom Hearts 2, there's the Pirates of the Caribbean world, and that world sucks. Because all the pirates have like these realistic renders and stuff, and then Donald, Goofy, and Sora all walk in with their normal-ass cartoony selves. And they contrast so hard with literally everything else. And
that's the thing with like I love putting characters in situations or environments they just don't belong in. Like okay, so in the new Wreck-It Ralph movie, I know you said you're not a big Disney fan, but I love Disney.
You keep talking about it. It's still a story.
Yeah. So in the new Wreck-It Ralph movie, they get Vanellope and Ralph go into this world or game called Slaughter Race, which is like a GTA inspired kind of cartoonish, not cartoonish, but like Disney cartoonish, or like like the realist version that Disney can produce. So there's that, and then they get pulled into that world. It's like this mobile game, I think. Anyways, so Vanilla,
and they become a microtransaction, right?
Yeah, exactly. They get their DLC, but so seeing these characters race around in this world was kind of surreal because like you see all these like high quality textures and rendering and lighting, and then you just see two goofballs just driving like a Ford 2014 Ford GT. And it's just jarring for me. I still haven't been able to get that scene out of my head.
To be fair, that scene is probably played off a little bit for humor and contrast.
Yeah.
The Kingdom Hearts stuff takes itself completely seriously.
Yeah?
Yeah, like 100% seriously. It's ridiculous how serious it takes itself.
I refuse to believe that a story starring Goofy and Donald can be serious. But I'll take your word for it because I haven't played it.
It's not. We can't take it seriously because we know better, but the game itself takes itself super, super seriously.
I got
you. And that's the difference.
I got you. Another thing with Wreck-It, that's a great example of the hero's journey.
Wreck-It Ralph is almost point for point hero's journey.
Yeah, honestly. You start out in let's take the first movie. You start out in Fix-It Felix game. The Ralph hates it. He wants to be a good guy. That's the call to action. That's what gets him to hero's journey, or not hero's journey. What's it called? Hero war game. He goes to war game, and he's like, oh, I'm the big bad guy. This medal, this is the treasure I need to solve my situation at home. So he gets the medal, and then he goofs himself into an escape pod, and then that goes to Sugar Rush, and he's introduced a threat to that game.
Because he brought one of like the isolated elements of War Game that's supposed to stay in War Game over to Sugar Rush.
Yeah, and that has the threat of destroying the world. So Ralph meets a friend. That's the assistants. He gets his friend. and then they go together in race. Ralph teaches Vanellope, builds the car for her, and then they go do that. And then King Candy comes by and is like, actually, secret, I'm the bad guy. I'm actually, so spoilers for a 10-year-old movie, but I'm the bad guy. You know, I'm actually this guy who you thought was dead when they unplugged his game, but actually I'm King Candy now. Actually, I'm Turbo. Because I went turbo. That's why we have the phrase went turbo. So they go through that, and then King Candy wants to stop Vanellope because she's the rightful owner of the thing. And so Vanellope's treasure and Ralph's treasure kind of become one. They're very linked. So Vanellope's success equals Ralph's success.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's actually like kind of a part of the hero's journey. Oh, there's the like ordeal, where that's one when they become like, oh, your success is my success. That's when the rewards line up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is.
And then
so
good
because the reward at that point is when Ralph realizes like the medal doesn't mean anything to him, but the relationship he has with Vanellope is what matters. And also, he doesn't want the world to fall apart. And Vanellope also doesn't want her world to fall apart.
Exactly.
And so it kind of lines up, because it's like, Ralph can keep his relationship and friendship with Vanellope while also ensuring that the entire world doesn't collapse around them.
Right. And something... Wreck-It Ralph 2 wasn't the best movie, but it did transition perfectly from the first. It transitions...
Isn't Wreck-It Ralph 2 just Disney flexing on everyone because they own literally everything?
I mean, that's like most of it, but let's just that's first 5 minutes. First 5 minutes of the movie are picking up directly where the last movie sets off. It's like a month or two later, and it's like actually it's years into the future. But Vanellope and Ralph are. It's shown that they have this cycle of they'll go to their games during the day. And then after that happens, they'll spend all night together goofing around at different games. And that's actually kind of why the call to adventure happens, because Vanellope gets bored of her game because she's just so damn good at it. So she wants to explore this new thing that the arcade owner set up, the internet. So that's kind of her reason. And then Ralph's reason is to go in there because he wants to be with Vanellope the entire time. And then also, the steering wheel to her game broke, so her game was threatened again. So they just hate Sugar Rush, Disney does. They just hate it.
Yeah, they definitely hate their fictional video game that they made up, and they could have easily like actually made a version of and released, but chose not to.
I thought they did. I don't know.
No, I think they made a version of Wreck-It Ralph, but they never made a version of Sugar Rush.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, which, to be fair, Sugar Rush is just Mario Kart.
Well, yeah, but Disney.
I have a lot of issues. So Wreck-It Ralph is a really good example of the hero's journey, but I have a lot of issues with, like, the world itself being kind of poorly built. Like, for example, literally every video game except for War Game, the villains are just, people. They're just people. Yeah. You can talk with them. You can chat with them. They have villain meetings where they all get together and they talk about how, like, it's just their job. It's just what they have to do. But then, like, War Game has this literal world-destroying monstrosity that threatens literally every other game in the entire arcade. Yeah. And it's like, hold on a minute.
So I was always really confused by that. Like, why would the developers just make a real virus?
Right? Like... That's just terrifying.
Like,
for real.
It doesn't add anything to it.
Like, just imagine if the xenomorphs from Alien just, had free reign to go into Mario and eat Mario. That's fucked up.
That'd be a cool battle. I'd watch that.
It probably exists on YouTube. Let's be honest with each other here.
Are we talking about, like, Smash Bros. Mario or just, like, mainline Mario games Mario? Because that...
Like, mainline Mario.
Okay, then Mario's dead. He's gone.
It's this weird... It's so strange. And, like... The first time I watched the movie, I was so, like, off-put by it. I was so pissed off. I'm like, okay, I understand you need this threat to exist, but at the same time, like, it doesn't make sense with the way that you've set up literally the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. And, okay, so another thing about it is that Wreck-It Ralph frustrates me in that they expect you to already understand all these worlds. Because hey, you're watching this because you like video games. So I'm already expecting you to know about Sonic. I'm already expecting you to know about all these different characters from all these different games. And if you don't, oops.
To be fair, a lot of these characters, most of the characters that are actually integral to the plot are original.
Mm-hmm.
The characters that aren't are just kind of like references. Like Zangief and Bowser just show up in the one scene.
Yeah,
Sonic doesn't even have any speaking lines.
Yeah,
he just shows up on a billboard.
Yeah, speaking lines.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
I thought he just showed up on a billboard.
No, he's like,
was just like,
if you die in the game, you die for real. Or, no, he does like, if you die outside your game, you don't regenerate.
Yeah, then, something like that.
And then in the second movie, Sonic has my favorite speaking line ever. Because Ralph is like, what's Wi-Fi? And Sonic, being the condescending asshole he is, he's like, that's called Wi-Fi, Ralph. And it's my favorite thing ever.
Oh my god.
I'm so glad.
Sonic has never even had, like, an online game. Why would he know what the internet is?
I mean, he's had games with online connectivity. There's the Sonic All-Stars Racing.
I guess that's fair. But that game sucks.
It does. Actually, I hear it's one of, like, the best Sonic racing games. And then there's a new one coming out soon that no one's gonna buy.
The new one might be better.
It might
but
be.
The original one, I got a free copy of it on the Xbox because I had gold for a month.
Oh, okay.
And I played it for like 20 minutes, and it was just harder to control Mario Kart, and I hated it.
That's true. Speaking of Sonic, Sonic Forces is a good example of how to fuck up a story.
So, yeah, Sonic Forces was basically made so you could be buddies with Sonic.
Mm-hmm. So what frustrates me is that Tails has had this character arc in games recently, where he's been showing to be, it's like, oh, I'm a capable person. I'm Sonic's sidekick. I build things, and I'm beginning to become independent and by myself. And they just basically shit on that in this game. As soon as Sonic gets kidnapped by Eggman, which is a thing that happens.
Yeah,
Tails,
like right away.
Immediately after the first level.
Immediately.
And then, cut to... Anyways...
And then the whole world goes to shit.
Yeah, exactly. So Tails basically becomes this whiny crybaby who can't do anything for himself without Sonic. Like, he's in the street, and then the Aqua Monster from Sonic Adventure 2, Chaos, comes up, and then Sonic from the past shows up, and he
for no reason, either.
Well, because Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces are connected. So after the events of Sonic Mania, he gets transported to Forces. But that's a different
why?
reason.
You
it
know?
Sucks. They like to overuse the classic Sonic. Sonic Generations did really well, and they're like, hey, what if we did that but for every game ever? So,
yeah.
I mean, and those games are plagued with a whole bunch of gameplay problems, but just talking about the story itself, like, they threw Infinite right away. Like, they just...
Yeah.
They yeeted that boy into the bin.
They were like, here's the new cool villain. He's Shadow, but edgier. Like him now.
He's Shadow, but, like, he somehow sucks more. We managed to write a character that no one likes. Are you proud of us? Because...
Hey... we don't understand why our franchise is popular and why people continue to buy it, despite the fact that the last, 20 games have had absolutely no value to them. Let's continue that trend.
Lost World was alright. Generations was a pretty good game. I really loved Unleashed. People gave it a lot of shit, though. It might just be because of how young I was when I played it. But
when people who play Unleashed, they say the Sonic sections are really good, but the Werehog sections, where you have to do the fighting, is what everyone hates.
And here's the thing about it, is that I like playing those too, but just because I was probably... When that game came out, 2008? Yeah, I was
Something
7.
like that. See, but if I'm going to play a fighting game, I don't want I don't like weird hybrid games most of the time. I like games with focus, where there's a lot of mechanical focus, and everyone's doing something very specific. Bayonetta is an extremely focused fighting game based on combo fighting and whatnot, and there's not a weird random driving section where you have to... Okay, I mean, it kind of is at the end of the game, but it's really ignorable because it's really short.
Bro, spoilers.
Whatever. I didn't even tell you that much about it.
Well, I
Shut
didn't
up.
actually care. So how about that?
It's like a 13-hour game. It's really short.
That's too short.
Yeah, that's short for game time.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, and then like Mario Kart is a kart racer. You don't have to get out of the cart and beat the shit out of Bowser occasionally.
That's true. The Mario spin-offs are very focused on one thing. Like Mario Kart is a very good kart game because they've had a lot of times to get it right. And honestly, getting back to the topic, you could probably pull the hero's journey out of Mario Kart if you really wanted.
That would be a Ludo narrative. It wouldn't be a direct written narrative. It'd
Right.
be more like you as a player experience the hero's journey more than the game characters do.
Yeah, but you'd still get one. You still get the hero's journey.
You could still get one. Well, you could get that in real life too. Like
Well,
I've had miniature real life hero's journeys.
You're living a better life than I am then.
Like, wow, shit, didn't know Kay was an actual hero. Fuck.
Like, Jesus Christ, what? Like, you got like the Master Sword or something? That'd be cool.
No, I have 6 Keyblades actually.
You got the Xenoblade, the Monado. That's what it's called, right?
I've never played Xenoblade.
I mean, either. I've played the 2, but that one's better just because I haven't played the first, so I don't know.
I have Excalibur. In fact, I have 12 Excaliburs because they're a craftable item, and I got
being
enough
selfish.
materials to craft more of them.
You're being selfish.
I needed the money.
No. Give them back.
Give them back. I need to find 11 different King Arthurs to give Excalibur to now.
Yeah. I mean, it's
As the
only
hero.
fair.
There we go. Make your game about like a really powerful hero who made way too many items that are supposed to be unique items, and he has to go give them to other people that in other universes that are supposed to have those items.
Actually, not a bad idea.
That'd be cool. I'd
It
play that
would be
game.
cool.
I'd buy that.
I would play
That'd be
that.
fucking
I'd
fun.
play that right now. Boot it
Oh,
up.
that sounds like a great idea.
It's called Thunder
Before the
Ed.
podcast started, Grandma's talking to me a little bit about how he's designing a game.
Yeah.
So hey, go follow at Gremsy1 on Twitter or at Just Narratives on
No,
Twitter.
Don't do
and
that one though. Don't do the second one.
don't follow the person whose podcast you're listening to right now.
Follow me instead. I have a Discord. You can't not. It's only mine.
Anyway, if you follow those 2 accounts, there's like a non-zero chance that if once Gremsy releases some info about that game, you'll see it.
Yeah. There you go. So, okay. So let's pick a different reason why the hero's journey sucks. So,
Different reason it sucks.
not.
So my actual criticism of it is the way that like story structures are used by people sometimes is they're used as like the end all be all, where they try to apply these story structures to all stories, even in places where it doesn't like typically apply. And they act as if because this story didn't follow these story beats that are familiar to them, it's a bad story.
Yeah.
And that's become a very common form of media analysis, and that bothers me a lot.
I totally agree. The hero's journey has become sort of like a bible for film critique, and it's just not, because you don't need it to have a good story. And the fact that a lot of people think that you do is frustrating because they clearly didn't enjoy the story. And you can just say you didn't like the story. You don't have to apply different reasons as to why. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like, oh, they didn't do this, and that. They didn't follow the hero's journey when really the story didn't need it to begin with.
Absolutely.
And
I think one of the other issues with people with media critique is sometimes they dislike something, but they don't know properly how to describe how they dislike it. And so instead of like thinking about it and trying to figure out what exactly it is, they'll just kind of hop to like some of the quickest like nitpicks that they can find, or like simple critiques or whatever. And I feel like the hero's journey is one that makes it very easy to criticize stories if you try to act like it's the only way a story can be written.
for sure, and that's one of my biggest problems with like CinemaSins. Is that
CinemaSins is bad.
They're subjectively bad for a lot of different reasons, but they, even as a comedy channel, they offer nothing of value in film critique.
Yeah.
So they suck.
Basically, the appeal of CinemaSins, which is one that I previously fell into, was it felt good to like be listening to like these intellectuals like criticize these simple mistakes in films that should have been fixed so easily.
Yeah.
But like, if you go and look up literally any critique of CinemaSins, you'll find them pick one random video and then explain how CinemaSins is wrong in like 7/8 of their critiques.
Yeah.
Because CinemaSins doesn't really critique films so much as they just find random things they think would make funny punchlines.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people fail to understand that when they watch CinemaSins too.
At the core of their channel, they're a comedy channel. They're not film critique. So it's I think it's generally unfair to apply the same standards you would have for film critique to them, because they're just not. But at the same time, if they're going to front as film critique, then they should be treated as such, and they should not be making the nitpicks they are. I understand, being harsh on movies, but to the extent of being mad at product placement or these are all like obviously comedic things, but it's pointing them out as strictly as a film critique channel is just bad, just awful.
The only things that I feel like I gained from my time watching CinemaSins was they pointed out that a lot of characters in movies eat apples, and they're usually bad guys.
Yeah,
and that was kind of like a interesting. I never would have noticed that on my own.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
like a couple of other like really common tropes, like I wouldn't have noticed if not for the fact that they were pointed out. But everything else CinemaSins did was not actually super beneficial for me in learning more about film critique.
Yeah, and I'm not the best at film critique, but I'm certainly not the worst. I enjoy a lot of stories for a lot of different reasons. The problems I have with the problems I can have with films is that sometimes they get lost in their own story. They get lost in trying to push a message instead of focusing on the story. Like you and I were talking about this the other day. BioShock Infinite gets lost in its own story.
BioShock Infinite. My critique of it is that it has this start where it looks like it's focused on these political drama kind of stuff, like racial ties and all that jazz. And it looks like it's going to be a very serious critique of U.S. and its institutions. But at the end of it, spoilers for like a 10-year-old game, at the end of it, they throw all of this aside and they turn the story into like a weird, everything's a multiverse actually, and you're the main character, but you're also the main antagonist.
What?
Because of the multiverse. And it frustrated me a lot because they didn't build anything up properly, and they decided to try and use sensitive topics to make their plot, but then throw those topics aside once it became too inconvenient for them and what they actually wanted to write about.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, you go to this lighthouse, and you go in the sky, and it's like, oh, there's this parade happening about false prophets, and, this is obviously very, I'm just going to say, Southern in traditions, values.
Yeah.
It's very... this is good. This is the end all be all. If you do anything other than this, then you are literally Satan. Or like trying to tear down this utopia we've built. And then there's a scene in the game where you're given a gun and you have to kill the one of two people on stage. So
no, you're given a baseball, and you're supposed to throw a baseball
at
an interracial couple,
right?
Where one's white and one's black.
It's been a while.
Yeah, well, I remember it because it was a bad scene.
Anyway, so you do that, and then eventually you lead into this kind of... You go to this place, I can't remember, but you go to this place, and you meet the leader of the revolution, basically, for equal rights. And then events unfold, and then it's basically saying that any power is bad. Everyone should be equal. There's no such thing as power in heaven or rapture or wherever we are.
They basically say that like if you revolt against oppressors and you take power away from them and start using that power for your own benefit, you're just as evil as they are. Is kind of what they push.
Yeah, and I can't agree with that message. I
can't either.
Black
people were literally being used as slaves. They were literally being owned. I think they have the right to fight back.
Yeah, I agree. I said that very hurriedly. I apologize. I do agree. But it's they use this message, and then at the end of the game they throw it away. And like Elizabeth is like, actually, I'm your daughter, and you're the good guy, but you're also the bad guy too, and you suck. And you're going to continue to suck unless I kill you.
Yeah, it's they went for like, they decided for some reason that a plot twist would make an interesting story and would distract you from all of the other stuff that happened. And when the game first released, that is what happened.
Yeah, people played it because it was a BioShock, and people loved it because there was a twist at the end. People also would have loved it, arguably more, if they had held a consistent theme. And that's an example of the hero's journey got cast to the side. It was like there's basically no motivation for Booker other than I have to save Elizabeth. Even though it's fine, that's a trope, that's a thing in itself, in and of itself. But at the same time, it was very.
But like, why?
Yeah,
why is he even there in the first place?
There's a why, because he just meets her, and then he finds out that she's been in this cage, and that's his motivation to get her out, because these people are after her because she's no longer in the cage.
Booker is such a paper-thin character, and once you start thinking about him for more than like 6 seconds, the whole story falls apart.
Yeah, his character is okay, but what if I was just one thing? What if
my character was Gun? And with that, I think we can call this episode a day.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Grunty.
No, you're right.
We've hit the 30-minute mark.
Yeah.
We're totally good.
We're good.
Anyway, if you want to hear us talk more shit on BioShock Infinite, check out my Patreon. Go at the $5 tier. You get a full 40-minute bonus episode, and you'll get to listen to all that stuff.
Bye, guys.
Anyway, thanks everyone. Goodbye.